So I've got the car in the air, put it on axle stands, nice and safe. The wheels are under the car, out of the way, where they're not going to get scratched. Noticed a nail in my rear tyre, so I'm going to have to sort that out. But yeah, looking on there, it was actually upgraded suspension already. So it's called Pedder's suspension. I think it's Australian. And I gotta be honest, it is pretty good. Like, it feels like, it feels like STI suspension, probably a little stiffer than that. But it's really nice, you know, it's not too aggressive and it's not too floppy, and the car has a nice balance on the road. So I'm quite happy with the suspension. So it will be interesting to see when I go to the coilovers how they compare. The trouble with these is obviously looking at them, they're getting on a bit now and they're not adjustable. So the ride height is 30mm lower than standard, and the damping's not adjustable, neither is the camber. So you're pretty much stuck with what you got with these. Whereas with the new coilovers, obviously we can adjust everything on them. So that's really where coilovers come into their own. Now, it doesn't make sense to buy coilovers and just stick them on and hope for the best, because if that's what you're going to do, you might as well just get good shocks. Coilovers, the whole point of them is that they are adjustable. Now, looking at the suspension, it's pretty crusty. It hasn't been off in a while, so we're going to go around, lubricate all the bolts. As you can see, we're going to get WD-40 all on them bolts, leave them soak for a good half an hour. And another thing I've had to check as well, some coilovers, like my Tains I had back in the day, and my BC actually for the Evo, they don't have welded on captive nuts on the brackets, whereas on these max speeding coilovers, it appears that they do. So the brackets for the brake line, the bolt rather, the nut rather, they are there, so should be a hassle-free install. And then we've also got the tab then on the rears, so that when we go and fit the rear brake line, we're not going to have any problems with it flopping around. We can fit it as it was on the factory suspension, so that's good. It's surprising how many aftermarket coilovers don't actually come with that. So the camera's going to go on charge, and while that's happening, I'm going to be soaking down all the bolts with WD-40, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a hassle-free install. Everything looks good so far, so let's get to it. So we're at the front and I'm ready to take off the shock, so I'm going to start by whizzing off these bolts here. This one holds on the ABS sensor bracket. I'll wind the bolts back in once they're undone, just so I know for sure which one goes where when I come to fit the next one. So they're undone. Now we've got two bolts holding in the bottom of the shock absorber. There we go, that's the shock bolts dealt with. So we're just going to separate this now, it's being pinched. So I'm just going to stick a socket extension in. And out it comes. The only thing holding that shock in at the moment now is the 3 bolts on the top mount. So we're going to undo them and the shock will fall out. So I'll grab it with one hand, with the other I'll have the impact gun and doing the bolts on the top. So even though these shocks did handle pretty well, they are looking extremely crusty, so it's probably about time they were swapped out. It's time to torque all the bolts now on this coilover. So it's 14.5 Newton meters is the proper torque spec. Okay, so we've got to tighten up the lower shock bolts now. They are 129 foot-pound. So that shows how to fit the front coilover. It's all torqued up nice and everything's looking good. So we're going to move on to the back. I'll do the other side off camera. It's exactly the same. And then, yeah, we'll do the back. So now's the time to do the rear shocks. We've got to undo a bolt under the back seat. It's just exposed. Pretty easy to see. So there's one either side. Same in the back, there's two bolts holding in the rear seats. So we've got the seat out, pretty easy. In case I didn't explain earlier, two bolts down there, then the bottom seat pops out, then there's four bolts down there. Just reroute the seat belts, and then the seat is on hooks. So open the parcel load thing, and then you can pop the seat out, shut it again, and then just pull it out. Now the top mounts here, pretty simple. There's 3 bolts there to undo, and then down here we've got A little tab there holding the brake line to undo, and then the 2 bolts. So a little more simple than the front, but the front was pretty easy too. So it literally took me like 3 or 4 minutes to get those seats out, so don't be intimidated by it. But I'll take off these big bolts first on the bottom. They're the harder, so we'll get all them loose, and then once they're done, it's just a case of undoing the 3 bolts at the top. Same as the front, then the shock will drop down, and we can put the new ones in. So let's do it. So these little clamps here, what hold the brake line on the rear, they're, I'm pretty sure they're not in the right position, so I'm just going to bend them out a bit, and that's roughly how they are on the old suspension. So we're going to test it now. It's important, obviously, I got copper grease on the disc. Got to clean that off. Just going to fit the wheels, and then I'll lower it down. We'll see what it looks like. So this is the rear installed. Looks the part. Here's the front. Just going to fit the wheels, then we're going to see what sort of height is sitting at. I haven't even tightened up the collars because I know for a fact that they're going to need adjusting. So it's going to begin, put on the floor, we'll see what it looks like, then I'll make adjustments then. The front, I reckon, looks really good, but the back, we want to get that a bit lower. So, yeah, we're getting it straight back in the garage now, dropping that a few mil. Not sure exactly how much yet. I'm going to measure it, try and work out the difference between the rear and the front. Once it's level, we're going to pretty much take the wheel back off. I'm going to clamp down on those collars pretty hard so that the ride height doesn't slowly change. Then I'm going to put all the wheel nuts on and take you for a drive. I worked out that the back was 40 mil higher than the front, so I've been measuring this distance here. I'm trying to shrink that by 40 mil. I then realised I didn't want it perfectly level, because typically you want the rear a little higher, otherwise the car will understeer. So the rear is going to sit about 10 mil higher. So it's pretty much set now. There we are, so that's exactly 10 mil higher than the front now. So yeah, it's all done now, looking pretty good. It's not too low. Sitting pretty level. It's 10 mil higher on the back, but you can't really tell. And the reason I've done that is it keeps the car from understeering too much. So yeah, looking really good now. Just going to tighten up all the wheel nuts, torque them up with the torque wrench, and then I'll be having a quick clean up, have a shower, and then I'll take you for a test drive. So I'm just popping out now to get some dinner. I thought I'd take you with me and we could see what they're like on my initial impressions. Okay, so my first real drive. Well, I've only backed it out the garage to check the height. Just want to check one more thing. Make sure the locking wheel nut's not left on the hub. Yes, I've done that before. Now when I initially backed it out the garage, it had no clicks on the dampers. It did feel much softer than the last suspension. So I was on the minimum stiffness, whereas now it's on halfway all around. So initial impressions, you can definitely feel more. It's definitely slightly bumpier. Don't worry about the noise. That's just the seat belts, where there's no seats in the back. First impressions, pretty good. The old top mounts were creaking on the last suspension. They weren't very noticeable, but I could tell there was something going on. These are absolutely silent at the moment. Whether they'll stand the test of time, I'll let you know in the review video. But initial impressions, they're pretty good. They feel alright. They feel really good, honestly. And I'm not just saying that because they were free. I almost said no because I'm a bit of a snob. And you know, the cheapest I would run is Tame, like, or BC. But honestly, they're not bad. I did notice, actually, I checked all the wheel bearings when I had the car on axle stands. One of the rear bearings is absolutely shot on this car, so I'll be replacing that ASAP. There's a lot of lift off oversteer. I like it. Night and day. The camera's fallen. Night and day difference, honestly. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm not going to push them too hard because I know that there's a wheel bearing now that is on its way out on the back. So once that's done, I'm going to be testing them. The back end's coming out on it quite a lot and very, very easily. So that's a good sign. That means the car is handling neutral. You could get the back end out on the pedals, but you really did have to exaggerate the lift. Not that, you know, I go around drifting everywhere, but it's something that you can use to judge how much performance is being left on the table with your suspension setup. So if the back end does come out, you know the front and the rear axles are being used at least somewhat evenly. But it's much more aggressive on the oversteer than the pedals were. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I have really got to go. My fuel's about to run out, and I'm going to go and have some dinner. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.